Hey, what's up? Check it out. This is the magical peanut butter. What does it do? Oh, it's customized. What? How? Because it's customized. It's custom peanut butter. That's why. It's custom peanut butter. That's what we do. That's a little plug for a potential conceptual future product. It's kind of a joke, but it's kind of a hook to begin with. It is. It's custom peanut butter. It's interesting, right? I don't know. You have to taste it. It's custom because it's got all kinds of different nuts and spices and goods from many, many different seeds. That's what makes it unique in terms of customization. Various of seeds. Anyways, moving right along into today's lesson. I mean the news. This is the news. This is the news podcast. News podcast. Starting off with not a bang. Starting off a little bit slow and weird. But let's try to move into it. Let's try to get going. It's been a little terse and rocky to begin with. But what we want our news start with today is about realization. Realization is almost like a compound word. Somewhat. Sort of. Listen to it. If you slow it down. Real. And then the second word is not a compound word. It's not an actual compound word. Because the second word is not a word. Real, though, is a word. And the second word, realization, is not exactly a word. But it does factor in to the overall equation. But it's just a matter of taking that second part of the word out of the equation to make the thing real. It's that simple. So what you've got is the word realization. But when you take out the word realization, which isn't an actual word, but you take out that actual part, that part at the end, that part that's called isation, when you take that part out, you've got what's left is real. What's left is real. What's left is real. What's left is realization. What's left from realization is real. Meaning, what that means, in essence, is if you have real and you take out isation, meaning that you have energy on the back end that has the equation that is able to equal what is real, for there to be then a energy equation which can match one thing to another thing, which puts an equal sign in the middle. That equal sign can then become a bridge, and it's possible to then go ahead and cross that bridge. So what that means, in essence, again, is if you have something that causes that is energetic on one side of an equal sign, and then it's also similar on the other side of the equal sign, then it makes it so you can then transpose and transfer to the other side of the equal sign. And how that equals realization is because it becomes real by detracting the second part of the equation, the isation, from the word realization. And then you have something that actually becomes real. And what that ultimately means as well is that you've got the two sides of the equation, and you get it to become real because it's a realization, faction, equation, situation, sization. It's basically an energy equation that comes down to items being energetically similar in sound in a circular sense, that if the circuit is complete, that it's possible to then cross the bridge, and then it becomes real. But in the similar fashion, it does not necessarily become that way unless the energy is present. So it must be present, and then it's possible to cross the bridge. The real equals the bridge, equals crossing the bridge, equals the equal sign to be able to then cross the bridge. That's what happens when the energy is technically there, and the realization is realized, because realizing something entails the realization, making it real. So therefore the word realization entails making something real. But it's not just necessarily about that. Because it's not just necessarily about that. It's not necessarily just about that. It's the word real is separate from the word realization, and the word real is not necessarily supposed to be within the word realization. It's about realization, meaning realizing something. So if you realize something, it's not necessarily making it real. It's just realizing something like, oh, I think it's acknowledged, it's real, it's actual, it's okay. But the realization is like trading. You're trading the thing for the reality. Once the realization happens, it means, in essence, that the energy circuits are connected, and then therefore it's real. So that's therefore how it sort of equals real. At the same time, it's like an equal sign to real, but at the same time, the word itself is not defined as real. It's not meaning that something is becoming real. It's meaning that it's an acknowledgement of something as basically as the definition of the word. It just means you acknowledge that something is there, it's present. It's an acknowledgement that it is known. It's like a fact. It's like then embodied as something that is meant to be known and internalized as something that is a fact, factual. It's real, it's truth. That's what it's embodying. That word, in essence, is truth. As opposed to something that goes from fake to real, that goes from transposing to not existing to existing. That's the difference between this equation and that word and the definition, is taking the word, taking it, transposing it into reality by using the energy equation so that the energy makes an equal sign, and then it's a bridge, and then you can cross the bridge into reality, where that thing becomes reality. Using the word realization is a symbol to symbolize the energy equation when the circuits are connected and the ingredients are present, so that, in essence, realization makes something real in that instance, where you can cross the bridge because the energy is present to make it as such. Whereas, in essence, it's less about acknowledging something, it's more about making something real. It's about crossing the bridge. It's about making the thing reality just by acknowledging the energy exists, and therefore it's like mentally you cross the bridge because you know it's possible, and therefore it's real. It's like it's something that's simple. Basically, you're holding a cup of water, and you know at that time that you can take a sip from the water, but if you weren't holding the cup and didn't have the realization that you had the cup in your hand with the water, that you could not then cross the energy bridge to be able to take the cup to your hand, with your hand to your mouth, and then take the sip necessarily. So that's kind of the difference between the realization, the word, and then the realization in this podcast-ness situation, where you're talking about making something real with the word realization, by taking the isation out of it, and by just basically making something real by crossing the bridge energetically, by acknowledging that the energy is present to be able to cross the bridge to begin with. If you know that the cup is in your hand with the water, you know energetically you can cross the bridge to get the water to your mouth, because energetically it's all present and the ingredients are present to make it happen. The same thing is true in thinking. It's thinking about something, acknowledging something in the same way that your brain tells you if your hand has a cup of water in it, and that cup of water is then able to go from your hand to your mouth because you see the physical cup in your hand and you see the water in the cup. That is all energetically present to be able to make your mind know that you can follow through with that whole process. And therefore, if you have energy equations where one side equals the other, you can therefore cross the bridge, even if it's in a mental sense and you don't physically have the things on the other side. If you see that you have the things already, you know you have the ingredients in your refrigerator, you know you can make a pasta salad, you know you can make a quesadilla with tortillas and cheese, period. So that's therefore the realization in terms of having ingredients to make things real, by using other ingredients and then developing a bridge to be able to then make things real by adding certain equations, and then that chemistry can therefore cause the other thing to be an effect. It's cause and effect, in essence, a bridge on one side to the other, using the word realization and taking the realization, making a realization equal the ability to cross the bridge to get to the other side of the thing on the other side that wasn't there to begin with, because of just acknowledging and realizing and having a realization that something is conceivable, and therefore it is real at that point, because chemically and conceptually you just have to walk across the bridge, and then therefore it's real because you already have the ingredients, and therefore it already is real because that potential is realized, so therefore it is real. And that's the difference between the definition and leveraging the word for reality to be able to acknowledge and use the function to be able to make it into unique new items and things, especially in a business sense, for acknowledging and creating and acting upon market demand to be able to facilitate things that want to be fed to the market demand. If you see the market demand is hungry for something, any given thing that a market demand has in a total addressable market, and you can feed it something because you know the ingredients that are in your fridge are possible to be able to feed what that specific mouth of market demand is hungry for, then you can add the ingredients, make the realization at the same time, transpose and walk across the bridge and make that a realization and reality. And that's how it transposes to the business sense in terms of energetically. Moving to the next portion, we're getting into energy spectrums, energy and investment, energy and in the sense of investing and investing and energy and philanthropic energy and investing at the same time. So what those things are, what we're trying to do in the future casts and podcasts and things, are adding energy and investing in philanthropic energies together, so that in essence we're able to go ahead and transpose that mindset, so that those transpose, we can transpose that mindset to begin with, to begin with. What we can do is take that investing in philanthropic energy to be able to try and make conceptual imagery, basically like the website Visual Capitalist. They take different imagery and they make different interesting things out of statistics, and we want to do that, start to do that, the same thing with the podcast starting going forward. This is a little insert message of the blurb to talk about that in essence. Basically, we want to take investing and philanthropic energy spectrums and potentials, and then be able to mash them together, so that in the future, for future podcasts, we have the titles similar to what the purpose of the podcast is to begin with, and then also match a visual to each thing to be able to try to also communicate with the visuals and visual sort of diagrams similar to Visual Capitalist, so that there's energy flow somewhat to like building an engine and then writing it on a piece of paper, so that there's energy flow on the thing. And then like similar to the last thing that was mentioned before, is talking about ingredients and making ingredients equal and other things, so that these visualizations with investing and philanthropic energy at the same time have like chemical sort of equation type of situation on paper, or in terms of diagrams, in terms of symbology, in terms of visuals, in terms of taking the visuals and making art out of them, and then being able to transpose them into the future podcasts and things of that nature, so that there's art connected to each messaging going forward necessarily, and that's possible to continue to communicate with the messaging in the form of art in essence, and or visuals that are like Visual Capitalist, that website that does sort of cheeky statistics, and they transform them into visuals. And that's what we kind of want to do going forward, and being able to use that as a leverage, it as a form of communication and such, but also draw interesting visuals and comparisons and connections and ingredients that are combining in a sort of a chemical sense to hopefully equal potential on the back end for what is sort of viable, and be able to hopefully conceptually, like in the first instance, be able to transpose those conceptual connections on a continuous basis, and be able to do that in sort of an ongoing sense. And hopefully we're going to go ahead and try to get that done. And in the last part of this podcast, we're going to talk about Warren Buffett. The last thing is just to talk about him in essence in terms of assets, how he looks at assets, and how is his methodology for growing a whole portfolio, which is in essence is that if you take things and you look at them and they have a low value, and you get enough assets that are basically in your portfolio that are undervalued but have the potential to grow, if enough of them that there's in essence a potential and a leverage and a gateway for them to grow, that if there's a way and a methodology, because the assets are underpriced and you get enough of them in your portfolio, that the methodology is that in essence there is an ability for them to grow, because there's just odds that are good for that. If you all have a whole field of seeds, that hopefully some of them will grow. And that's the whole purpose of mentioning it in this methodology, is because a lot of seeds are free. A lot of seeds are able to be thought of, just like in the first example with realization. You can realize something and it's free. You're not paying money for it. It's different energy, different energetic senses, and different combinations of different energy is possible, and it's free. And then therefore it's similar to Warren Buffett's example where he's talking about this, but it's in essence somewhat free, because you can start with free, you can leverage free, you can use free, you can use the essence of free energy that exists in the world, and be able to leverage and plant seeds in the mental sense, and develop partnerships that can connect, and be able to conceptually grow things if you're able to grow them with other people, and be able to work around and find different ways to conceptually grow and connect, certain ways to make a field of assets that are conceptually like seeds, to be able to drop seeds like plants so that they continue to grow, and our business functional, to be able to connect with greater markets and market demand, and feed that market demand with supply. You got to continue to feed that market demand with supply. So we're going to go ahead and try to continue to do that. And that's what Warren Buffett does. But he has a lot of money. He's always had a lot of money. So he gets, not always, but necessarily, he uses that to buy companies and things. Whereas on this front end of this, back end of this example is basically you got to just use your mind to be able to use the first example, to use realization, to be able to cross the bridge and then add value to other markets by adding and feeding supply to demand. Supply to demand. Finding demand first and then feeding it with supply, and then connecting with suppliers and connecting with partners and partnerships to be able to then market to the demand, so to be able to do a dance like a flute to flutes itself into the mouth of the demand, so that therefore the worm, it goes into the hole for the demand, and then therefore you've got a lot of assets that have the ability and potential to grow with a little bit of legwork added, so that ultimately you can use those assets to be able to grow from nothing, and just continue to repeat that process and use nothing, and use free energy to be able to add up to assets that, like Warren Buffett is talking about, is using enough assets so you have enough seeds to be able to plant the whole garden, so you can hopefully grow different things on an ongoing basis. And it doesn't always have to be Warren Buffett-sized purchases of whole companies necessarily, but you can start with that and then kind of move up on an ongoing basis. Thanks again, TehC Tech. Sorry for the messiness. All right, peace.